Good morning to our YouTube audience, and good morning once again to those of you who are with me. 12th of December 2021. And as I have been doing for the last few weeks, I wanted to just kind of note the concurrence of several different occasions, depending upon the calendaring that one would reckon time with in this moment. And the first thing that I want to say about December 12th, 2021 is a meaning that is accorded on this day to a group of people that no one wants to be a part of, but some of us are. So I first learned about the organization, the Compassionate Friends. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Compassionate Friends a number of years ago. But it's an organization that has formed itself for grief support, initially for parents who suffer the death of children, and then even adult children, but who've lost parents who lose kids. And then the Compassionate Friends found itself widening its embrace just a little bit to include parents and siblings of the deceased. So, anyway, the Compassionate Friends, not unlike AA or whatever, it's a international support community. There are resources and there are chapters and there are meetings in different areas. It's more robust and organized in some areas than in others. And I did not lose a kid, but I'm a sibling member of the Compassionate Friends. I had a brother who was murdered, which brought me into the Compassionate Friends. And once a year, around this time, they identify a Sunday for an international candle lighting observance. And so today, around the world, generally in the evening, there will be spaces. A lot of times it's not sacred spaces. A lot of times it's auditoriums and schools or community halls or whatever. And sometimes it is churches. When I was a pastor, the church that I served, we used to host the Compassionate Friends candle lighting service. But in order to make it accommodate for that community, we would strip the sanctuary of most of its religious symbols, because often this community is grieving in a painful way. And I did ask somebody to do a reading for us today that is a Compassionate Friends candle lighting service reading, in case there are those of you for whom this is. And it's not on my list behind me, but that makes me want to segue to Blue Christmas. The songs about Blue Christmas and the reality that in the midst of all of this narratives and commercials of mirth, there can be an underlying mental health struggle. What do you do if you're depressed and everybody's telling you you're supposed to be happy? And those of us who struggle with a mental health mood component at this time of year get branded as Scrooges and Grinches and bah humbugs, and that can be really worse. Like, that can make it much worse. So I start by acknowledging that the holidays are often difficult, and that the very expectations that we layer upon them can make the holidays more difficult for those who it was already a difficult sort of thing. Let me stitch together now. So in my personal journey, I grew up as a kid of a Catholic family, and yet I was not a very religious kid. I did have a part of me that experienced a childhood called the priesthood, but that didn't really stick into my teen life and adolescent young adult period when I became this staunch atheist and renegade drug fiend, precocious, rebellious brat. And in the emergence out of my intense secularism and cynicism I got sober as still a relatively young adult. Before age 30, I was suddenly not drinking and not using drugs. Weird turn. People were surprised, and I was surprised. I was surprised I could stay sober. And I love what you said, Sophie, about your song. People were encouraging me to come up with a conception of a greater power that I could embrace. And I really didn't feel comfortable with the religious traditions of my childhood, so it was a very tough little period for me, the first couple of years, trying to sort out where I was going to go. And what came to my awareness, which is what I want to say on this morning, is that I awoke to a need for ritual and calendar in my life. I came to appreciate that people who were going to the church I started going to had something that I didn't have, which is an overlay on the year. That in their case was Advent, Christmas, Epiphany, and Lent, Easter, Pentecost. And it made spring and winter and summer and fall meaningful in a different way than just leaves dropping and days getting shorter and then snow and then daffodils. And I think the universe gives us a tremendous amount of meaning through its seasonality, but this overlay of the calendar and its sacred stories, and then the rituals of process, things like communion and baptism and church services with music and candle lighting and Advent candles and all that sort of stuff. The kind of stuff that earlier in my life I would have sneered at and thought was folly-roll or makeup. Suddenly it was really meaningful to me, and I was almost jealous of people who had it and accorded it meaning, because I was so skeptical about the claims of the faith of the traditions that held these rituals that I wasn't ready to go. So, when people talk about Blue Christmas, I can totally remember my cynical, angry, bitter, I was blue about faith. I just thought people who had staunch belief in religious traditions were absurdly, ridiculously beholden to these, they seemed to me like out and out lies. And in my journey of being mentored by wonderful, gentle people, not Father Bill yet, but people way before Father Bill, one of my first therapists, and then this guy in this church that I started going to, and definitely people in AA, sponsors. I had this wonderful sponsor. He would just laugh at my cynicism and struggle with all of these things. And his laughter and love for me was a response I didn't know how to handle, because I wanted to fight with him. And he was just like, oh, poor Jack, you poor thing, you just don't get it, it's all about love. And I was like, ah! And so I was on this schism, and I was really struggling, and I went to this retreat with the invitation of my sponsor. His name was Tom. I don't know why I'm telling this story. This is not a story on my outline behind me, but I don't care. Anyway, I went to this retreat with Tom, and there was this nun. Her name was Anne, and I was like, oh no, not a nun. And I just was afraid of being proselytized like the people in the saffron robes that I remembered from the Port Authority bus terminals. I don't know if any of you are Krishnas. I have no disrespect to the tradition, but I had thought that was just as bad as David Koresh. And then also, I didn't want anybody knocking on my door in a suit with the Latter-day Saints or the Seventh-day Adventists, all of that stuff. I was like, get out of here, slam the door in people's faces. So anyway, but my sponsor said, you are going with me to a retreat. We go to this retreat. It's not terribly far from here. It would be about 45 miles that way. Still a religious community center. And I don't know if they still have retreats on the property anymore, but we get there, and this woman comes out in the evening. There's a big snack table, and I've never been on such a retreat before. And Sister Ann comes out, and she says, I have 3 words for us to contemplate for the weekend. I can't remember the other two words because I remember one of them, and it made me want to leave. Her word was conversion. And I wanted to say, I object! You know, like, you're not supposed to be talking about a word like that in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's supposed to be safe for me to be here, even though I don't subscribe to the literal sort of tenets of your tradition or of any tradition. And what I want to bear witness to, in the midst of all of that mess, my own struggle, the reality that crap happens, the murder of my brother, the deaths of so many people to opioid and other overdoses and suicides, like the number of, if we were to count our dead just in this room, it would be a sad and staggering number. COVID, and the bitterness of our time, the negativity, and then overlay on it some, and I'm sorry to pick on them, but I will, the Walmart commercial of Falderall and, la-di-da, and make sure your tree has the perfect amount of lights, and Christmas is like this narrative of mirth. And the reality of human struggles that are really escalated at the moment. You all sit here, my friends, not so much the YouTube audience, thank you for listening, but those of you who are here in treatment, you're here at a miserable moment in your own lives. And just this week I was talking to the person who's probably in the room. There's a patient here who this is like their 7th treatment. And I want to say, good for you, man. Keep coming. If you need 8, go to 8 treatments or whatever, because keep fighting for sobriety. But my prayer also for the 7th treatment person and for the 1st treatment person, for every single one of us and for myself, is what Sister Ann wanted for me, which is a moment of transformation. A moment of the dawning of a new day. In the midst of the cycles of realities of birth and death, and of summer and winter, and of youth and aging, and of drunkenness and sobriety, and all that sort of stuff, I want to proclaim a word of true hope and realizable, meaningful transformation. Not shallow, marketed mirth, but of real difference. I said last week, and a number of you said something to me about it, that I'd rather have you miss one Christmas now and be present for more Christmases later. And I'm saying that again. That's what, and the conversion that Anne, I always wanted to find her again. I never saw her again after that retreat, but people would tell me that she continued to do retreats and had a great recovery ministry for the rest of her life. And look what happened. 2 years later, I was in seminary, and here I am, 27 or 28 years later, preaching. Weird. I never would have guessed that my life would have put me in the chair where it would be my privilege and my responsibility to talk into the Blue Christmas and the treatment holiday and the deaths of children and the insanities of our time. And the word that I am given to say is that none of those things I all authentically lament, but none of those win the day today. This is a place of new beginnings. This is a day of new beginnings. This is a season of new beginnings. Next week, on the 21st, I didn't look to see exactly when it was, but we'll turn midwinter, right? The winter solstice. And it will no longer be in the ecology of the planet, in the astronomy of it, getting so short. The darkness is so long and the daylight is so short. I despise it. But I find hope just in the remembrance that it will turn itself around. It will. And you can have a winter to spring turn. Your recovery. And it can be a death to life turn. One of the things I thought about is I talked this message through a number of times. I had a long drive this morning. And one of the things I found myself remembering was that early in my sobriety anniversaries felt more important than my birthdays. So to mark 365 days without a drink was a bigger deal than to mark 30 years on the planet. And that speaks into this idea that you who are here are our nestlings. That's very paternalistic, but in Caron's sense, our ways are familial. But you're the hatchery. You're the daffodil bulbs that can burst forth in new life. And if you are feeling darkness because of the doldrums of this time, that's probably honest and legitimate. But I want to tell you, it's not the end of the story. That's the crucible. Like that's the darkness is the necessary burying of the seed that then the new plant grows from. And I believe that's what the message of today is, but that's also what the routine shtick is of the Caron chapel service. This is always a place of dying and rising, of new beginnings, of hope, of conversion, of transformation. And I'm just trying to leverage the season's rhythms to sort of integrate it with that fundamental aspect of our every Sunday song. If you feel like you are at the end, I am going to proclaim you are at a new beginning. It's good news that you're at an end. And it's great news